If you were a bystander during the release of Animal Crossing: New Horizons, you most likely believe that you witnessed the rapid decline of players into madness as the Rayman copy pasta went viral and haunted the walls of your skull at night. Or you may have noticed an influx of interesting art, the word core used more times than you've seen your mother's face, and a lot of really cute pictures of round trees and smiling squirrels. You also may have contemplated the group of people you're friends with as they hurled an array of words at Cobb so heinous that nuclear physicists are trying to figure out how to harness the energy and make it into a bomb. If you were on the other side of the Animal Crossing coin, you might remember 8-hour villager hunts, TikToks of TV screens, watching kick-out methods for villagers that looked like they had a tramp stamp of your IP address, building up your first island paradise, and getting ready to rip a person from Nookazon limb from limb until you could peel the Nook Miles tickets from their bloodied hands. You made new friendships, flew to an island owned by somebody across the globe, and you cozied up to 5 a.m. music. That was 3 years ago now, and since then I have rotted into a rat-eaten corpse and regenerated into a 12-eyed, biblically accurate angel. Which one will take over my little brain today is a mystery, and I leave it up to whether or not somebody pisses me off with an offhanded comment in the next hour. A lot can change within the span of only a few years, and a lot did, especially within the Animal Crossing community as a whole. When time passes, there is of course a change in general public interest and the feelings of that public on certain trends or ideas. That's just how time and history works, unless you're in government, in which your main goal is actually to go as far backwards as you possibly can until the cave women aren't hot enough for all the 27 minutes from death congressmen and they have to start moving forward again to keep the cycle going. However, Animal Crossing: New Horizons' lifespan had a very odd history that grew on circumstance, popularity, and nostalgia. A surge in sensationalism dropping into a cynical look within a few years doesn't quite match Nintendo's normal repertoire. So why did this happen? What even happened in the first place? Let's explore the last 3 years of Animal Crossing's legacy together and try not to get frustrated at the thought that we spent 3 hours in a turnip exchange queue only for somebody to crash the entire island and leave us all empty-handed. Emily, I remember your name till this day and I will not rest until I find you. I also wish God would seal me in a cage, but I have to make this essay or I don't get my little treat that keeps me going. Alright, I swear I'm going to try and explain the backbone of all of this without repeating the same Wikipedia information you took in when your obsession with the game first hit, because I know you did. I know you were on the wiki. I saw you. I don't want to be bored, you don't want to be bored, so I'm going to try and make this history as fascinating as possible by putting little people on the screen to wave at you. Just kidding, I don't feel like editing that in. Anyway, Animal Crossing, prior to New Leaf, had a relatively active but noticeably smaller fan base compared to Pokemon or Mario, which were Nintendo's biggest IPs at the time. On the DS, Wild World sat comfortably in the top 10 best-selling games at number 9, while City Folk, with a slightly more mixed reception due to some reused content, you know, it just not being the best Animal Crossing game, sat at number 21 on the best-selling list for the Wii. Both were beat out pretty consistently, just like me when I say the correct opinion, which is Marie from Breaking Bad is hot. No, I will not be taking any questions, you know what I mean. Anyway, Animal Crossing remained a quiet but truly heartfelt game on many people's consoles. The GameCube game, while being very rough and still new in concept, still stood as many people's favorite Animal Crossing entry because of its cruder villagers, replayability, and the fact that you could interfere in your friends' personal lives. The animation and the atmosphere of the game was extremely charming, it felt very homey and welcoming. A lot of people have it on their list of favorite games for a reason. It held a lot of comfort in the cartridge for so many young kids, or sent them to therapy with Rossetti's voice, which I'm happy to announce would not have gotten to me if I played Population Growing because I'm built different. That was until 2013 rolled around and Animal Crossing: New Leaf released for the Nintendo 3DS. This title was a huge turning point for the series, adding advanced customization, the ability to make your character into something other than a kid that looks like he's named Trevor, dream suites, town ordinances, new interactions, swimming. I have terrible lung capacity right now, I'm sorry. New personality types and villager species created a more dynamic cast of creatures to interact with, and the ability to foster a more social community with features like Street Pass and the aforementioned dream addresses really set it apart from the other entries. New Leaf clocked in at the 6th best-selling game for the 3DS, and was also when I personally became aware of the series. I did not have a 3DS because a park near me had a slide with cigarette burns. This addition to Animal Crossing's already lovable concept truly boosted it into new heights and started up a social media presence for players. I've already gone more in-depth on this topic in my other annoying ADHD-medicated video essays, however I do believe that New Leaf's entry into spaces like Tumblr and Instagram made it possible for the game to have the lasting impact that it did. Social media can sometimes act as a time capsule, which is good or bad depending on what kind of child you were, and preserve memories and things like games, and I definitely think it was used that way in New Leaf. But either way, the impact was there. New Leaf players were active and eager to keep playing through the 7-year hiatus between mainline games. Though the game was not as popular as it once was, the community remained vibrant, fresh, and helpful to one another, as well as the normal catfights that you get into that I really wish I was a part of. I should have been there, okay? I would have had so much fun. I should have been there. I love a nasty little argument, a truly foul little scuffle. I love it. When looking at New Leaf's activity and engagement over time, there's one thing that we often tend to forget, and it's actually really important. That little detail is Welcome Amiibo, which released in 2016, about 3 years after the game's initial launch. This update was absolutely massive. It incorporated not only a campsite, amiibo compatibility, new minigames, but it also added one of the most exciting features of any Animal Crossing game in my opinion. The ability to sell your town for bells instead of watching your villagers plead for their lives when you have the sudden urge to snap their entire world away into an unknown data pool to suffer for the rest of time. We don't know what happens after death, neither do they. They're just as scared as you, but have only you to pray to. There is no god except for the merciless player. It also added an absolute unit of new villagers, totaling in at 64 brand new townsfolk and some compatibility with Happy Home Designer, which I'm not 100% sure what it was, so if you could tell me, let me know. This update made huge waves in reanimating people's excitement for the game even 3 years after its release, especially when people hadn't even put it down yet. The community was still bustling before 2016, but this was an explosion of new content and really made it feel like a brand new game. Not only was this an incredible move for Nintendo profits-wise, because amiibo sales had to be banging and they also got to do a couple cool partnerships. Nintendo makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I buy fake amiibos from Etsy on company time. Sure, you can go ahead and say that gold and silver are valuable, but I personally have Butch in a little coin made from paper, so what the fuck is wrong with you? But it also solidified the game as one of their best, which is why when New Horizons came out one entire celery generation later, it had quite the score to beat. If I talk about the pandemic, which is still going on by the way, one more time, I'm gonna rip the hair off of my head and feed it to myself, so you know exactly what we were all doing in March of 2020. But besides all of that, the new installment of Animal Crossing's release was on the horizon. Please don't kill me, okay? Or do, I don't care. Have a ball. The Switch entry for this series was teased all the way back in 2018, giving people a full year before the announcement trailer to claw at the walls and sell their new Leaf Town over and over until the guilt no longer plagued them. In 2019, however, the first real, actual, detailed look was given to the public. The slow cascade of the Switch logo appeared into the waiting eyes of the community who had grown up with these characters. Tom Nook looked just as punchable as he did in all of the childhood memories. New Leaf's graphics were leagues away from what was being shown in this direct, with incredibly smooth and fluid animation replacing the more pixelated style of the former, which I found incredibly charming, but whatever. Nintendo is cruel to me, it's okay, they don't love me, they never will. Even if I send them a million letters scented with perfume, they will never return my touch. Character customization, a full-blown island getaway, a crafting mechanic, outdoor decorating, and more assured the players that the time away had been well spent. They also added gay people, which was actually the most important part of the whole thing. Anticipation for the game grew absolutely massively between that direct and Animal Crossing's final release date, and so did people's free time. Or maybe it didn't. Mine didn't. I don't plan on doing shit ever in my life. I didn't do shit back then, I don't do shit now. The build-up of a game can often be the driving factor for its success, but in New Horizons' case, I don't necessarily think that it was the main factor. It may have been helpful, but it had a lot more writing for it, and a lot of it was very poignant. The overwhelming joy and anticipation that had been waiting for 7 years was truly incredible. You know, I'm sure that a little bit of anger also built up at that time, so we'll see that later. Those who had never even been involved in the community in the prior years had joined in to be ready for the new game's arrival, and with that anxious waiting, expectations also grew higher and higher and higher. If you happen to be in a cave or possibly a crater on the top of the moon, the release of Animal Crossing went extremely well. It skyrocketed in sales to become the best-selling Switch game behind Mario Kart because unionized workers such as Mario and Luigi always win. Go support the writers' strike, you sick little bastard. Your good pal Mario says, "Mamma mia, those wages are low." This game has sold over 42 million copies to date, which is absolutely insane and toppled the sales of the Wii U in general by 3 times. The most memorable part of the explosion for me was the virality on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, forcing the Switch into sold-out status in almost every single store I checked, and causing me to spend money on a brand new shiny yellow Switch Lite. I don't have the money now either. In fact, with Zelda releasing at a whopping $70, $10. I think the next time I have to pay for a game, I'm gonna bottle up my plasma and ship it off instead of refinancing a car. Scrolling through TikTok and seeing hype about New Horizons reminded me of the old New Leaf commercials I used to watch as a kid. I always really wanted to play it, but I obviously didn't have a 3DS because I lived near a park where there were cigarette burns on all of the play toys. I would watch the commercials, I would think about it for a minute, and then I let it go for years, and I had no intention of ever buying a console to play it. Spending money on anything that was not a necessity seemed absolutely egregious to me at any other moment in my life, including the week before I did it. But now looking back, I am so glad I saw an influx of content showing terraformed islands, villager interactions, pixel art being created, and people picking up their shiny copies. The little goblin that lives inside of my brain that I feed with a small bowl of re-downloading Neko Atsume every couple months was absolutely delighted I decided to do this. I gave in, I ordered it, I bought the game, and many other people did too. The energy in the early days of New Horizons release was absolutely incredible, and you really had to be there to see it. I hate saying that because I hate being places, but it was a spectacle. It had this really childlike happiness to it, and it provided a sense of escape for those experiencing what would soon be coined as a cozy game for the first time. The eagerness to share was something that you don't see a lot in the way that it was presented here, and the amount of people that came from different walks of life and different ways of living was absolutely fun to see. It attracted a lot of people, it provided a safe space for a lot of people. See my other video essay that's now bad quality compared to anything else I've put out, and you know what? I love that. New Horizons was a simple, easy to learn, and comforting atmosphere, and it proved to be welcoming for old and new players alike. The creativity spawned from new mechanics and features brought in a sense of challenge and beauty. Those who were into art and design had a specific place in the game for them, and those who just wanted to play with their villagers were also completely welcome. To put it in the most basic of terms, whipped coffee and Animal Crossing New Horizons tongues battled for dominance in March of 2020. This era, in my opinion, was the game's honeymoon phase. We'll get into this a bit more later. The community's impact stretched over months in 2020, YouTube videos cataloging villager hunts and builds eating up your recommendations. If you were like me at that point, I was watching a bunch of oil paint restorations and I was a little upset when they disappeared. I love those. It feels like you're brushing the inside of your brain. It's fantastic. Nookazon was founded for easy interaction and trading, turnip exchange for all of the stock freaks, you know who you are, and the subreddit amassed over 1 million users. 2020 managed to release a lot of incredible games, and a cozy world dominated the forefront. It also provided an outlet for people to release the deepest, farthest evils in their soul for a moment without causing any harm. It was actually proven in a 2020 study funded by me in my bed that copy-pasting traits of your worst coworker into Apple's completely harmless dialogue is far more effective than telling my therapist how I was feeling, and I also didn't get arrested. This is only one of so many tips I can give you for surviving in this economy. Okay, who can afford bail? Apple can. Apple's not real. The release of emotions is incredibly healthy, and it's so much more healthy when you do it in a game made for children. Smaller spaces that were more individualized also formed, and those with similar interests were able to navigate the social side with relative ease, as much as we could. Katie on Calicove, a wonderful friend of mine and also an absolutely incredible content creator who likes me in spite of my overall personality, was kind enough to answer a few questions about her perception of the early days. Quote, "Like most of us in 2020, I started playing Animal Crossing as a much-needed form of escapism. At the start, I didn't even realize there was an entire community built around such a beloved game, as Animal Crossing New Horizons was my first game in the franchise. From Googling a few tutorials about how to get more iron to suddenly deep diving into rabbit holes on YouTube and Reddit, I quickly realized there was a very welcoming and fun group of like-minded people on the internet, all just using this game to connect with others and express their creativity. It was so refreshing to be able to connect with others beyond the confines of our own homes at that time. Everyone seemed so excited about the game whilst also being so welcoming and helpful when it came to trading fruit, materials, cataloging furniture together, or even just sharing design ideas. It almost felt like there was no shortage of inspiration and fun in the entire first year of the game's launch, and the community was a huge part of that. 2021 saw a noticeably slower but still bustling community attitude. These players were now much more experienced, having full islands under their belt, lots of custom designs to use, and Pinterest boards that they will never touch again. The trending page on TikTok and Instagram lacked the same animal bitching that we all know and love as people moved on from topic to topic. This is incredibly normal, and I am honestly surprised that Animal Crossing lasted in its trending state for as long as it did. Animal Crossing didn't fade either, it just condensed itself into smaller communities and more tight-knit groups. This year also saw the most plentiful amount of updates, most of which, well appreciated, were mostly ignored a week or two after they came out. I honestly think that the community enjoyed speculating about what the new update would consist of rather than the update itself. The new items were usually fun to play with, but their relevancy faded away pretty quickly, and there's a reason for that. See, Animal Crossing New Horizons had a very bold promise: free updates, and a lot of them. This was insanely enticing for players looking to pick up the game after its first initial rush of hype, and it would make Nintendo a lot of money. It was a great marketing idea. However, the exact words that were used in a press release happened to boast about 3 years of new content. And to be honest, that is a bit baffling to look at now. It seems doable until you break it down into the actual pieces that it's made up of, and that's interesting for Nintendo to include. Especially because people in the Animal Crossing community remembered it. Oh boy, did they remember it. I will never forget it. I know full well. I have heard every single word of that repeated over and over again. I know 3 years. But again, this will come up later. The constant stream of small item updates had almost no effect on the player base as a whole from my perspective, and the excited buzz in the community that was so vital to its initial popularity began to slowly be replaced with the repetitive nature of the game popping up in conversations. And I get it, I love complaining, I really do. I would complain right now. Actually, I am complaining right now. But this change in tone definitely caused a shift for the community overall. Thoughts, wants, and dreams for the next update that would improve the quality of life, add things missing from previous installments, and other small but valid critiques piled up in the comments section of Reddit. If you want to shame me for being on Reddit, if you want to do that, if you want to take that chance, I want to ask, where else do you find the answers for very, very specific questions, huh? Jesus Christ, it's like nobody respects anybody anymore. Ideas for content surrounding the game, which was one of the biggest parts of the community if you enjoyed it, also started to dwindle bit by bit in 2021. I don't blame anyone, I can't figure shit out either. This year, however, had one last trick up its sleeve, and that was the 2.0 update. On one fateful day, we received a 20-minute direct from Nintendo about the 2.0 update. It was like watching gladiators fight. This direct was absolutely bursting with new features, and it seemed incredible from what we were given. The discussion and love for the game reemerged to levels similar to the first wave of insanity, but never quite rivaled the amount of excitement that was allotted the year prior. And it makes sense to me, honestly, considering the fact that I saw one too many men who fish in real life thinking they would enjoy this experience on TikTok. I knew you wouldn't last. I rise from your ashes, Brian, and I rebuild. You will never know the taste of a complete Critterpedia, and neither will your children. The 2.0 update added an entirely new game as well, which was Happy Home Paradise, a paid DLC. This DLC pulled features from Happy Home Designer, which was a completely separate game for the 3DS that came after New Leaf. I genuinely think this is the best possible thing they could have done for the game, and it is my favorite part of the 2.0 update by far. It was incredible, and I really miss the hype for that. I will never forget the day Brewster's green face ruled over Twitter, and for a moment I felt peace. I felt joy. I remembered what it was like to feel human touch. The more opportunities that are made available for people to have happy, fun, emotional discussions that they'll remember forever and share things like the Direct together, the more inviting the game will feel to pick up again. Old players returned, islands were restarted and prepped for the update's arrival, and the fandom laid in wait. I am so sorry for using the word fandom too. Okay, I know what it's associated with, I know, but I couldn't think of anything else, and Tumblr rots my brain inside out, so I'm hoping that the pain is just in me. I will never forget the night that the 2.0 update dropped, which coincidentally was actually a full day before it was supposed to. There was magic in the air. It was like an election night. It was incredible. This was the moment every player had been waiting for, the big update, the time where they could finally explore new features and truly make their island exactly as they planned. There was so much trading, people were showing off their Happy Home Paradise builds and having a great time. I really remember the boom being so exciting to see. So, that lasted a month, maybe 2. You could give it 2, I could say 2, you know, that's a little generous, but I could say 2. 2022 carried over the 2.0 hangover to the beginning of the year, with people's Happy Home Paradise builds and Cabin Island confusion keeping the lights on New Horizons for as long as they possibly could. The rise and fall of the 2.0 hype, in my opinion, jolted and dropped far faster than New Horizons did in general. The bonding between the community, though steadily becoming a bit more critical in nature over the years that had already passed, seemed to turn the dial overnight from full immersion in the game's features to discussion of disappointment, and for many of their points, they weren't wrong. Trust me, I absolutely love arguing. Okay, if I had the single chance to be like, all of these criticisms were so wrong, I would. But a lot of the time, I agreed with them, and I genuinely enjoyed seeing people's critiques. A lot of them were really well thought out and really eloquent. I genuinely think that it's very interesting seeing people complain about things, even though it can be annoying at times. I like hearing it, I enjoy it, sue me, fuck you. Nintendo's omnipresence, unlike a lot of other game companies, had always been more or less a silent feature in context of the game's impact, until the glaring issues with the game became visible in the absence of the honeymoon glow. They made suggestions in quality of life repairs, they protested at the finality of the 2.0 update as it was confirmed to be the last, and underneath all of it, interest also dwindled in droves. If you're cold, Olivia is cold. Let her in. People became less inclined to pick up the game over time and moved on to newer, more exciting titles. Obviously, a lot of people still play daily or weekly or restart their islands constantly. I don't know who that would be. Parts of the YouTube community has moved on to challenges and twisting the game into new, more creative outlets, and that's amazing. I love it. I wish I had the stamina to look at my Switch for more than 2 hours before wondering if I should have gone to college. Creative people in this space kept it fresh and alive for those that wanted to still take part in it, with so much heart and love being put into their content. There is an extremely special type of enjoyment that you can only get from people who are truly putting their all into what they do, and I want to shout out a couple people real quick who have kept me on my toes. There are so many people who specifically I feel like are just pumping the blood back into the community, and those people are Katie, who I mentioned before, who has such an incredible sense of humor and is so eloquent and kind. Amanda, the Amanda Files, who has become such a staple in the community and has the best sense of humor I will ever see. Jessie Matrix, who truly just lights up a room. I love her so much. Their personality is incredible. LexPlay, who manages to inject so much fun and love into so many different topics. She keeps up with things so well. Everybody knows Viz, Angry Coconut, for a goddamn reason. Their videos are absolutely incredible. They're so fresh and fun, and I cannot believe how fucking funny he is. I love him so much. Mike, Timmy versus Tommy, is so much smarter than I'll ever be, but don't tell him that. EJ Plays has managed to connect the community in so many different ways with incredibly thought out challenges, and I cannot imagine what he's going to do next. I feel very lucky that I've gotten to enjoy their content over the years, and I am so thankful for how much love and support and kindness they put into their videos every single day. So we meet in 2023, and the game's lifespan feels like it has come to an end a lot shorter than any of its predecessors. Many people still pick it up and play it to this day. I am not denying that, and I am so glad that people can still find a lot of joy in it, because I can too. However, the overall outlook on the game seems to lean on I love it, but I moved on. The once global reach of Animal Crossing has condensed into a small corner of the internet, still working and building, but quieter. So what in the fuck happened, and who can we blame it on? Our minds as consumers immediately look to Nintendo as the main deciders of a game's lifespan, and in terms of quality and marketing, it absolutely is. Nintendo gets to decide when the game releases, what mechanics carry over from previous installments, how the gameplay will feel. They basically get to decide everything except for how consumers will receive it. So what was lacking in New Horizons, and why did players grow resentful of Nintendo over time? When New Horizons released, the promise of upgrades had a great way of overshadowing the original state of the game. While New Leaf did get a massive content upgrade years after release, many people had no idea it was coming, and rated New Leaf as a fully developed game with no questions or issues because it was. It combined the town development aspect, the villagers, minigames, and social situations into one game, giving it a more detailed and immersive play experience than City Folk and Wild World before it. It had the Roost, the town's entire layout, Tortimer Island, and shop upgrades already built in. It felt whole, and it felt like a huge step up from the past, which is why, in its initial 2020 release date, Animal Crossing New Horizons seemed to lack many of the added features that New Leaf was known for. It proved barren. Sure, the updates were incredibly fun to wait for and get excited for, but the large added features of 2.0 didn't arrive until a full year later. Key features that were included at launch in a game, 7 years ago, weren't available for months despite the AAA game price tag. Characters that were treasured within the series, like Not Gulliver, were nowhere to be found in the first copy. Even after the 2.0 update, many were still missing, including Serena, the love of my life who we still haven't found. We presume her dead in a cave somewhere, and I find it very sick that Nintendo has refused any comment on this. Nook's Cranny, the main fixture throughout the series under many different fake identities to avoid taxation, had multiple upgrades that were available as you got further into your playthrough in older games. In New Horizons, get this, only 2 upgrades were available. Oh yeah, you knew that? Right, I forgot, you probably played the game. Once you got to know the Roost's owner, Brewster, you were able to work with him. It was your job to memorize the coffee orders of your villagers, or to Google them like a little shit, because I know you did. I did too. You can admit it here. This is a safe space. I think this is one of the most overlooked issues with New Horizons. Small goals. Well, I have always thought of New Horizons as a game without any goals, which is great and needed. I often forget about the fact that small and optional missions were absolutely vital to New Leaf. They were low pressure, rewarding routines that kept you coming back and logging in. Maybe you wanted to collect all the gyroids in Wild World, or find the Nook's Cranny upgrades, or make Reese divorce Cyrus for you. With the goals in the latest installment completely missing, their small presence is a lot more visible in the overall enjoyment and willingness to keep playing. You notice things when they're gone. Even villager relationships had new dialogue and actions as you got closer to them over time, which New Horizons really fucked up on their villagers. Which coincidentally is the next point I'd like to discuss. Animal Crossing population growing in Wild World are most often referenced because of their nasty villagers and realistic personalities that allowed you to break through their walls and get to know them. They were like the olden days Shane when we didn't even know what that meant. Yes, you can fix him. The crankies actually are fixable. Woo! The amount of dialogue kept each day of conversation new and engaging. Each villager had their own special way of interacting with you, while New Horizons just didn't. The dialogue of previous games was tremendously heavier than New Horizons in terms of the different lines and topics your villagers could discuss with you. Personality types, if you didn't know, have subtypes. I also didn't know this for the longest time. These subtypes are there to give the peppies or the crankies the appearance of individual personality while the same overarching type was present. New Horizons does actually have these subtypes, by the way. I didn't believe it when I read it, and you don't have to believe me either if you don't want to. The reason dialogue is so incredibly important in this game is because of the immersion that it provides. If a villager lifted the original games into the status that they had, a sense of companionship. When that's taken away, the villagers can become more of a nuisance or a trophy to display than something like a friend. Or an enemy. With the social aspect of the townsfolk being severely underwhelming, the presence of the real-life community was vital in making the game the success that it was. However, the already $60 purchase was tacked onto a 20+ yearly fee depending on what plan you chose to enjoy online play, which again, New Leaf came with for the delicious, sexy price of absolutely nothing. Sure, comparison is certainly the thief of joy, but Nintendo is also the thief of my money. Please give it back to me. I want tax returns on this shit. The membership was extremely useful if you wanted an island that was cooler and chicer than other islands because of yet another interesting choice that was implemented into the game. Some furniture items that are found in the Nook shop have color variations. Each island has their own specific selection made from the available colors, and that selection is the only color that will ever be available in the shop. If you were assigned yellow at birth, Nintendo would not let you get a blue cute bed unless you had connections. Online connections, that is. Those who wanted a certain theme for their island had to trade with other players to get the right color for their island. Scarcity of Nook Miles, which could be used to buy other color-exclusive items in the Nook stop, made those extremely valuable. The trading economy was absolutely booming, but you had to pay to even get an invite, and we all know that if you're not invited in the first place, nobody fucking wants you there, so what is this, Nintendo? What are you trying to say here? You want to say it into my face? Do you? Thank you. Even if you had no interest in accidentally typing no instead of no problem when someone says have a good day after Nook is on trade, the online capabilities of visiting your non-Nook profit friends fell extremely flat. And with villagers that make you wonder why you haven't tried betting your house in a poker game yet, this was quite the letdown. If you're a good little egg who's paying attention, you may remember that I mentioned the 5-star resort known as Tortimer Island before. In all fairness, I said it very vaguely as minigames, but you know what, it was there, so I'm not lying. Other than being hosted by a turtle who looks like a ball sack that tried out the MLM Monet conditioner, you were able to play minigames, take photos, and interact with your friends if you liked anyone enough to do so. Of course, visiting towns in the newly created Dream Suite was also included, again for free. New Horizons, on the other hand, had absolutely no minigames, dream addresses were added months after the game's release, and the fishing tourney angers me. Fruit is actually a really cool idea and encourages people to form friendships. I don't think it should be an added cost to the game at all. Nothing should be locked behind an extra paywall unless it's DLC. One thing that I did not mention when discussing 2022 in the Animal Crossing sphere was mods. Modding Animal Crossing was absolutely nothing new, and it was very present in New Leaf, where you could see all of those cherry blossom trees underwater that made you want to live in a bug terrarium. However, New Horizons' stents on them instead of whatever other random shit was on the leaves before are commonly remembered as a fallen soldier and the last true fleck of innocence on this earth. LISS the Last, the Animal Crossing community's treasure and also one of my favorite creators ever, already took the time to make an in-depth video on them, so go check that out. It will probably explain it so much better than I ever could. In short, star trees were patched out a few months after they arrived. They were easily accessible on treasure islands, which if you didn't know, treasure islands are actually another form of mod and allow you to get almost any item that you want from a bot. These, however, were around far before the other mods I'm going to talk about here. They also used to be paid for a time. I remember that day fondly. I actually don't. I hated paying for them. And to be clear, these objects were not at all malicious and were just cute and fairy-esque, but were unfortunately slaughtered like lambs, which is extremely sick and twisted. Can you tell that we can't have anything fun? Can you tell? Startree's dead. Happiness dead. Everything dead. This decision was overall quite bitter in the fans' mouths, including mine, because I had them and I was quite fond of my little guys, my little dudes. I love my babies. And if they were harmless and people had paid for the game, why should they be removed? The Startree massacre was forgotten quickly, though it stayed in the hearts of many forever in the form of a very deep scar. Mods, besides the Treasure Islands, really stayed in a very small niche of the community until 2022, when a boom of mod-related YouTube content exploded and awoke a new possibility for decorations, features that weren't explored in 2.0, and just general fucking good old-fashioned fun. It had a little bit of excitement for those who craved it, and a chance for that always present creativity to re-emerge. I think the mod era is incredibly interesting to look at, not necessarily the 60s fashion era, but I do like that too, and I would like to explore it more one day. It was incredibly entertaining to watch as a bystander, and those who wanted to take part in it didn't really have an easy way to access it due to the fact that you had to mod your Switch and it had to be pre-2017, as well as having a very large margin for error in the process. I don't want to make this already heinous script any longer than it already is, but the reaction of the audience was usually good if they were already fans of the creator, but there were some that found it counterintuitive to the game's premise. And there's also people who think you shouldn't be allowed to swear in YouTube content, so some people just don't want anyone to have any fucking fun. Anyway, the modding community brought a fresh perspective to many aspects of the game that desperately needed it. It had a novelty to it that was completely unused in terms of regular players. Nintendo, however, does not welcome this, and the crackdowns began to take over. Modded dream addresses were suddenly wiped from the dream address system, videos that creators had put hours and heart into were taken down and made completely unviewable, and in extreme cases, switches that were adversely affected by mods were refused care by Nintendo's repair team. LISS was actually one of the people affected, and my heart genuinely breaks for her and the other modders whose hard work was snatched away. I know how much time and effort it takes to make those videos. I don't want to go too far into the story here because it's hers to talk about and she has already made a great video on it, but my heart really goes out to her and I feel awful that that happened. I know how much work she puts into her videos and she's incredible. So, you know, I love her. I hope that she's doing okay. Of course, Nintendo has always been incredibly strict with copyright, and the terms of service did state that modding was against the usage rules. However, the reaction was very extreme and targeted people's livelihoods, and nobody with even half a life or a family or a job or a carpet to lay on even reads the goddamn terms of service. The 2.0 update just didn't quite fill that void that people were left with when modding disappeared. Though the 2.0 update was fantastic and added a ton of hours of new gameplay, introduced a couple of the missing characters that old fans dearly wanted, and gave some new mechanics that nobody really asked for, it just wasn't quite the Dexter reboot, okay? It didn't really have the effect that was intended. Brewster, the topic of conversation for many a disgruntled employee of Nook Inc., was celebrated and welcomed with open arms when the roost was teased in the direct, only to find out that the most interesting and engaging piece of his character, the ability to work in the cafe, was removed. So many people have incredibly fond memories in their childhood of working with Brewster, and that was something that they really wanted to bring back the nostalgia in New Horizons. Quality of life changes that were desperately needed by the community remained missing. The shops were still left with no upgrades, new dialogue was an afterthought, and features from older games that literally nobody gives a fuck about, high villager house visits that I can't escape from, join them instead. Cooking was also there, I guess? Who knows? I live in a silly little pod where I don't have to think about that anymore. Some made the point that we are lucky to get this much content in the first place, and I completely agree that all of it was a welcome addition, and that it helped the gameplay. I 100% believe that the developers put their entire heart into it, and I am so thankful for that. Some of the ideas were absolutely fantastic. In my opinion, Happy Home Paradise is the best thing they possibly could have done for the game. However, it feels to most that the most disappointing pieces of the game weren't fixed with this update. And with it being the final product, we were left with an incomplete game. Not only that, but the finality of that update completely changed the statement of 3 years, which created another perceived slight between Nintendo and the fans. Like I said earlier, I genuinely believe that the promise of 3 years of consistent updates, especially with a team working in the pandemic, was, overworking and harming your team is not okay, and I would rather have infrequent updates than hear that workers are struggling to keep up with demand. However, just don't say that. It's so easy to not say that. Keep your mouth shut, don't raise expectations, be fucking quiet. With Nintendo having such a large impact on the playability and features of the game, including the control of press releases and new additions, it could be reasonably assumed that these are the main reasons for New Horizons' decline. However, this video, it doesn't seem to be over yet, right? It's not done? Right, I have to record the rest of this. Normally I hate playing devil's advocate because it tends to be an excuse for people to reveal they actually didn't mind genocide that much, but the elephant in the room has yet to be discussed, and that is the community. If you have never heard me speak before, I'd like to quickly let you know that I am not the bigger person in any scenario. I am a bitch. I will in fact sink lower. I am in fact a part of this community, and I wear that badge proudly. Anyway, the Animal Crossing community as a whole is known to the outside world as a very kind, welcoming, and wonderful community, and for the most part, it is. I have met some of my best friends through this game, gotten incredible opportunities, and been given the gift of knowing you guys, and that is more important and crucial than we tend to realize. So many people have described this community as a safe place for them, and that makes me so happy. I know so many other people have also met some of their best friends here as well. So how could the players be involved in this? First of all, we are all fully aware of the rapidly declining attention span fueled by short form and fast trend content, because why else would I be balls deep in a cake decorating video at 2 a.m. with tears streaming down my face because I believe that everybody hates me? Katie also included some thoughts about the updates, which I found very interesting, and I really wanted to share them with you. Quote, "If I'm being perfectly honest with myself, I rarely played Animal Crossing for the seasonal updates and events even to begin with. Of course, the items associated with the 2.0 update and DLC release were major, but for me, the gameplay sustains itself without relying on consistent novelty. Maybe people disagree with me, but New Horizons feels like a completed game that doesn't require a regular update schedule to feel fresh and enjoyable on its own, depending of course on the player's playstyle. For a lot of people, the game might not have held their attention once hitting the okay, now just make your island pretty stage, but for me, island designing and decorating is one of the major reasons I play. As someone who literally tours Animal Crossing islands on my channel, trust me when I say there is no shortage of creativity when it comes to decorating an island. As nice as it would be to have more items, we still have plenty to be creative with, and Nintendo's decision to stop the updates isn't unreasonable at all, and let's be honest, who would ever say no to more new content forever? I'd rather have the transparency that they gave us instead of a total lack of communication on the matter. If anything, I'm hoping the lack of new updates simply means there's a new title that's being worked on behind the scenes. I really like this perspective from Katie, and it brings up a very important aspect of building a fan base for any video game. The fact that, while New Horizons is absolutely a game fit for nearly everyone to enjoy, the lifespan of a game can also depend on an individual personal playstyle. Maybe you're a fan of building, designing, or completing different monuments to certain themes. This, with the absolute abundance of tools to do so, may make the content seem to differ from those who grew up with the previous installments and expected that content versus those who picked up New Horizons for the game itself. I'm sorry I sound hungover. I just woke up. Commonly, entertainment in general is the fastest to leave the trending tab on Twitter or fall off of your For You page. It may go extremely hard, dominating every single piece of content created for that period and haunting you every single day of your life, but in the end, it will always disappear as fast as it arrived. Companies who run these sort of sites have the goal of keeping you interested, pushing you products or ideas, and making money off of those ideas. The more content there is for you to consume, the more time you'll spend and the less likely you are to get bored. A very simple machine that sounds like it was invented to test on monkeys, and yet here I am, still afraid of monkeys. New Horizons, oddly enough, had one of the longest crazes I've seen on TikTok. Not only did COVID help elongate it, but the amount of people taking part in building up something that took time and energy helped keep it afloat and trendy for much longer. In comparison, we can look at Cult of the Lamb, which is a game I love dearly and I've played quite a bit of. I should play more, I'd really like to. I love it, it's fucking freaky, it's my favorite. This game came out in 2022 to absolutely massive success, with fan art and content and subcultures abounding to meet it. This comparison doesn't quite hold up due to the fact that Cult of the Lamb is an indie game, and I totally accept that, but I honestly find it extremely enjoyable and more enjoyable at times than Animal Crossing. Cult of the Lamb, even with its massive following, fell off the trending page within a couple of weeks. Did this mean people were losing interest? Not necessarily. I fully believe that this game was just as high quality and beautiful as anything else Nintendo could produce, and yet it still moved on. Animal Crossing was huge. Not one person could get past March without hearing about villagers, Raymond, turnips, you get the picture. The more sensationalized something is, the more immersed the public becomes. Once you throw yourself into something completely, and you're allowed full days at a time to sink into it, the fixation can end far quicker and the initial draw becomes repetitive and boring compared to the first day. I think the lack of trendiness knocked off those who weren't really a huge fan of it and left those who really enjoyed it in the pool, which is who I was talking about for the majority of this video when I referred to the fandom. What also contributed to Animal Crossing's beating of the odds was the long wait between franchise updates, 7 entire years between anything good enough to be in my will, and that wait was very difficult for diehard fans. Good thing I wasn't one of those, because I would have complained like hell, not like I'm doing now. This created a lot of hype for older players and really drove the success of New Horizons home. home. However, when we're left to dream of expectations, a lot of times the real product ends up being a bit lackluster compared to what we were hoping to see. New Leaf and New Horizons are at their core very different games. Well, this can be hard to stomach a lot of the time and may not necessarily have been the right decision to take. New Horizons falls flat when we compare them. That's not a wrong or bad thing to do either. I definitely agree that many changes should have been made, but the overwhelming focus of the bad 100% clouds the fond memories of the game if you let it. However, with everything else logistics-wise that I've been discussing, these points really pale in comparison to, well, you know, people. We all know how people in fandoms act. Animal Crossing is a very unique situation where a massive influx of people, all very different in personality, joined one single community. It's kind of like Game of Thrones, or like 70 people getting stuck in a Holiday Inn because of a flood. Some of the most memorable events from the early days of New Horizons are remembered by the single, chill-inducing name of Raymond Animal Crossing. I don't need to explain Raymond to you. Don't fucking lie to me. My 84-year-old grandfather knows who Raymond is, and I did not tell him. Both the Catholic Church and the Satanic Church met together to discuss Raymond. If we weren't careful, Raymond could have been the next Bitcoin branding. You better count your fucking blessings, baby. The now infamous Raymond copy pasta about him being a comfort character and needing to be handed over to a player at once is only scary to me because this person identifies so heavily with the most evil subtype of person, and that is those involved in finance. Just because I know I need to do it, here's the dramatic reading. Okay. Hello, I have been following your tweets for the past 2 days and have come to the conclusion that you do not deserve to have Raymond on your island. He is my comfort character, and seeing him in an environment not meant for him brings me anxiety, so I will be expecting a reply to this DM when you have him in boxes and are ready to relinquish him to someone who will treasure him like he deserves. And scene, thank you very much. This picture, however, is indicative of the Animal Crossing economy. It will unfortunately be in any Animal Crossing history book. It will haunt us forever. The Raymond economy was constantly ragged on by those on the outside, and I understand it was weird. All of this was weird. I completely acknowledge that, but it wasn't just the extreme inflation of Raymond prices. Do not cut that fucking off, I will kill you. That economized the game. It was everything, and it became very overwhelming very quickly. Nookazon was absolutely an incredible idea and instantly took the community by storm the second that it was founded. Allowing players to get the items they needed with relative ease and streamlining the process was huge in terms of gameplay quality, and the layout made it accessible and easy to use for many. However, color-for-color swaps and fruit donations, like I mentioned before, weren't really the website's focus. The Nook Miles ticket was the almighty dollar in this situation, and that is not good. Nook Miles tickets allow you to hunt for villagers that you desperately need on your island, but take a massive amount of time to acquire without the use of a treasure island. This issue of supply and demand made them a hot commodity, and acquiring your items was a transaction rather than a trade. The economy of Animal Crossing turning into a marketable, profitable venture in the game is extremely interesting, but for many, having to build up their own hoard of riches made the game a lot more intimidating. In the case of villagers, something as random as a number generator picking the cat made someone instantly rich. Things that weren't even technically rare were inflated. The calming atmosphere of the game could be quickly dismantled for the wrong person who didn't want to get involved in that. The Nookazon community, of course, could also be harsh at times, with scamming and stealing being almost another game for some people. Don't get me wrong, I love a little theft now and then, but I just don't like when people who are trying to enjoy their game have to deal with it. It was awkward at times to show your island with less desirable villagers. It was embarrassing to give someone a tour when you weren't finished with your work. With this game being primarily aimed at children, and me specifically, I'm the only person actually, the amount of NSFW and uncomfortable art floating around as a joke was also not at all helpful. Please go fuck yourself, and not to a cat. What is wrong with you? There will always be an edgelord take on ruining innocent cute things, and it will always be disgusting, but I saw a really large amount of that flood over as memes onto Twitter and TikTok. This Nookazon situation also feeds into the concept of perfection and being the best at Animal Crossing. I've already discussed the concept of comparison at length in another video essay, but it's very vital here as well, and I'll try and keep my shit short. Challenges and island cores, or themes, became the main focus of Animal Crossing after the initial hype calmed down. Building up your island is an art form, genuinely, and I admire everyone who is able to create something so incredibly intricate and beautiful within their game. However, the flood of social media, as I've discussed before, and the increasing need to be perfect in the eyes of others contributed to building stress and trying to have an island as well made as other players. To look good in the eyes of people you don't know, to hold yourself to a standard that wasn't even there. This, in my opinion, contributed to burnout the most besides general boredom. The need for perfection will always take over. Challenges, in a similar vein, took over at times, and while I genuinely love a good challenge, the urge to take part in one that could disrupt your enjoyment just because everyone else is doing it can severely dampen the way you play your game. I don't honestly think that they helped revive the community. I think that they added more comparison to it. Island challenges and more in-depth themes arrived at the end of Animal Crossing's honeymoon stage. Like I mentioned earlier, everyone was more excited and engaged with the game right as it came out, which makes complete sense in the grand scheme of things. The first experience of a game sticks in your mind as the most poignant memory, and the overwhelming newfound stimulation was at the forefront. It's remembered most fondly because of that, and things are always the most interesting and time-consuming in our brains when they're new. I truly believe that a lot of the wonderful community members did get very upset when that shiny new effect wore off and it suddenly wasn't as fun as it used to be. Don't get me wrong here, it is devastating to lose something that you put a lot of work and time and effort into. However, it is also very natural. It's a part of our lives to move on, to find new things to love, and to let the things that carried us for a time rest. Not me though, I'll be beating this game for a single dose of serotonin until they drag me off of it, sorry fuckers. But the bitterness of that feeling can be hard to attribute to ourselves, and we tend to look for something or someone to blame the situation on. It's human. In fact, I blame Ed Sheeran for the fact that I have one leg that's shorter than the other. You can't prove me wrong. I believe that he made my leg shorter, prove that I'm wrong, and I'll stop. That's where the honeymoon phase ended and the cracks mentioned in the base game became very apparent. They were always present, sure, but the lack of enjoyment in the game starting to appear turned a more cynical eye against it. The complaints were both understandable and whack as shit, but in both ways, the undeniably good aspects of the game were overlooked in favor of viewing it negatively. It was an easy way to prolong interest in the game without having to ignore any of the feelings toward it. The complaining became louder than the praises at times, and the actions from Nintendo regarding updates and mods didn't help. In fact, the final update may have added more fuel to the fire. It's really hard to see the amount of joy the game has brought you when your most recent memories of it are discontentment. Again, I genuinely do not blame anyone for complaining, and I agree with most of the issues. Animal Crossing has had a fantastic lifespan that seems far shorter because of our perspective on it. But even if we were to play this game without the insane life-altering situation happening at its release, I do think it wouldn't have had New Leaf's longevity anyway. Games aren't supposed to last forever, and we should never expect them to. The place of a game in your heart is dependent on only the joy and memories it got you, not how other people perceive your play or if it lost its footing quickly on Instagram or whatever. The other side of the coin is also true. An unfinished, stepped-down version of a beloved series is never going to go over well, no matter how much excitement and popularity it garners. With people who are incredibly loyal and excited to be a part of a story, to take solace in a game and to make social connections within it, I absolutely believe that Nintendo owes it to them to deliver. It's owed to keep a relationship with them. But either way, however you see Animal Crossing's legacy, it will always have a huge footprint on the people who've let it into their hearts. Very, very large, huge, massive thank you to everyone who helped me out with this video, and to you for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this. It was really exciting and fun to make, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you to all of my members. Stay safe, stay wonderful, my friends, and I will see you next time. Thank you to Katie for helping me out with this. I love you. Goodbye.